I'm not bothering with an intro this time. Fabian Hürzeler at Brighton, tactical analysis. Let's get into this. Now, Brighton are brilliantly adaptive in their build-up patterns and play style. They go direct when needed, and they play a short passing game when needed too. I'll give you an example here of the direct play, and the reason they are going direct from Verbruggen, who in any given situation will always advance between the centre-backs to be an extra man, is because Newcastle are locked on man-to-man in their press. They're a physically elite team that have a clear advantage over Brighton's players in one-to-one duels, so obviously that presents a clear risk in Verbruggen playing short to the centre-backs. Where they can gain an advantage is going direct to Karim Matoma, who is in a one-on-one battle against makeshift right-back Lewis Miley. That's an individual battle that Brighton can rely on winning the majority of. Matoma's first touch is world class too, so we can pluck the ball out of the air, look inside and spot the run of Hinchelwood, who, because of how aggressive Newcastle's press is, can now receive a pass inside the box after getting a run on his marker, and in all honesty, should have buried the chance. Sometimes you can't play through a press, you have to play over it. Now this is a scenario in a game against Spurs where the physical threat and aggression in the press was not the same as it was against Newcastle. So Verbruggen now has his foot on the ball looking to draw a player over to him because being the extra man, if he can capture the attention of an opposition player, that frees up someone else within Brighton's build-up. Here is a common system you see from Brighton. The centre-backs are split with the midfielder just in front to create a diamond shape in the build-up, with the full-backs high and wide. Verbruggen isn't panicking, he's not rushing, his timing is absolutely crucial and when he plays this next pass. The Spurs forward that was marking Van Hecke is now coming over to press him, leaving Van Hecke free. And there is now a massive amount of space in the middle of the pitch next to Ayari because of how wide Brighton are making the pitch. Verbruggen, now as relaxed as Bonnie Blue's whole, all of them, plays a composed pass under pressure to Hinchelwood, who was dropping into the space in the centre of the pitch to receive the pass, with Van Hecke in all kinds of space, thanks to Verbruggen's composure. Hinchelwood then plays the pass to the free man, Van Hecke, but they still have to show courage combined with technical quality to play through pressure, as the Spurs midfielder that trailed Hinchelwood has now jumped to Van Hecke, leaving Hinchelwood in space. Van Hecke then plays the pass to Weifer, who is pulled away from his marker to receive the ball. Hinchelwood's movement has meant that Weifer's marker is now 2-on-1 against him and Hinchelwood. So with that advantage, they play around the marker to get Weifer in space in a more advanced position. And Ayari is now running off the back of his marker as the focus has been placed elsewhere. And with Hinchelwood originally dropping and taking this midfield marker with him, there's now a gap in the centre of the pitch, which Ayari is able to make a run into, and the timing of the pass from Weifer means that Ayari can penetrate the space ahead with the ball at his feet, from the goalkeeper to the opposition's half in a threatening amount of space thanks to an elite level of composure and technical quality, which you have to credit Hürzeler and the Brighton coaching staff for. This is another example of their elite in possession play. One movement you will see often is the Brighton fullbacks advancing and Brighton's deeper midfield too dropping in to help the centre-backs play out, getting their base set to truly start the attack with Dunk on the ball. Van Hecke then makes a subtle but important movement into the midfield area to pull his marker away and create a clear passing lane for Dunk to play to Weifer at right back. This will be apparent from this picture and also in the build-up pictures earlier, but movements aren't just crucial for the player making them to receive the ball, it's how that movement can create space for others in the team in more advanced possessions or for players that are just better technically. Weifer now can't advance because of the pressure on him from an opposition player, so he needs an option to pass to. Milner drops into the defensive line, free to do so because Van Hecke had previously vacated that position, and Weifer finds him with a pass, and now Milner has the ability to look forward and play to a more advanced position from his own. Gomez has moved in narrow to be the recipient of Milner's pass, and because Sunderland have been caught high up the pitch, there is now a great deal of space in between the defence and midfield, which Welbeck can receive the ball from Gomez freely now. Welbeck is now able to drive at the back line without pressure, with Minter looking to probe in behind, dragging the Sunderland right back in narrow, creating space out wide with Kadioglu looking to attack it away from anyone tracking him because of how well Brighton have played through the initial press and then how quickly they've attacked the back line. There's now a large amount of space for Sunderland players to have to recover into in the centre of the pitch. Kadioglu receives the ball out wide, and now because of the quick switch of play and Minter's positioning, the opposition fullback has a 2-on-1 situation, which Kadioglu takes full advantage of, slipping the pass through to Minter on the inside within the box. There's tons of examples I could show with slight differences in the patterns, but hopefully the examples I've shown can represent the quality in the way Brighton progress up the pitch. Brighton can also overload opposition fullbacks with wide attacks coming down that side of the pitch by design, not just with a switch of play thanks to the dynamics of the midfielder and the fullback alternating positions. I may do a video soon about why midfielders and fullbacks make these movements, because it isn't just Brighton specific, but Brighton do this to get their best passer in Pascal Gross on the ball facing forward, with Kadioglu and Matoma in different vertical lines higher up the pitch. Generally, the one in the wider area receives the ball to play around the fullback to the player in the half space. You can tell how familiar players are with this setup because the moment the player receives the ball out wide, the player on the inside is already making his move to penetrate. The fullback can also position himself in the half space between defence and opposition midfield lines in that sweet spot between wide player and centre midfielder as well as fullback and centre back, when nobody within that zone is really comfortable engaging because of the space it leaves in their starting position. The winger still looks to place himself on the last line to be able to attack the space in behind as the fullback receives the ball on the half turn so he can quickly play the pass in behind without any pressure. Then hey presto, one pass through that horizontal space between centre-back and fullback to a pacey player like Minter, and Brighton are now one pass away from a high XG chance. What you're seeing here is the Brighton shape in their more sustained attacking periods where the opposition are forced deep onto the edge of their own box. The 3-1-6 shape has become fairly common across all of football. The amount of players the team in possession can place on the last line is better for the players deeper in the formation as they have more passing options, which is why Gross and Baleba are deeper, with the fullbacks in the half spaces either side of the attacking midfielder. Typically, the best passer of the two midfielders will drop into the defensive line because you want to have your better progressor of the ball receiving it as quick as possible with the full view of the pitch ahead of him. He can set himself up for situations like this because of the four in the central positions causing the opposition shape to narrow up. There is now a clear angle available for Gross to play a diagonal ball to the winger on the far side as the fullback inverting for Brighton is making a movement in behind, again, not for his benefit, but to make sure the winger has as much space as can be granted. And does Gross have the quality to execute this pass? Of course he does. All the width outside of the box for Minter to play with now, and enough players in the box to aim for if he can find an angle for the cross before or after beating his man one-on-one. Sometimes this central overload can lead to the striker getting maybe half a yard of space, and whoever Brighton has up top, whether that be Welbeck or Ruter, needs to be able to link play with his back to goal and combine with players running off of him. The pass from Gross, again in the fullback position, finds Mitoma in close proximity to Ruter, and Mitoma's narrow positioning is causing issues for the centre-back too, as he stepped out of his defensive line to engage, and Mitoma is not the player you want to give a yard to. As Mitoma plays it around the corner, Ruter has got a clear angle available he can play the ball into after holding off his marker. Look at the difference in body positions as well with Mitoma compared to his engaging defender. The defender is upright, looking at the ball, he can't quickly change direction, whereas Mitoma has already entered his stride. The pass meets the run with Mitoma entering the box a good couple yards ahead of his marker in that inside left channel that he thrives in. Another attacking weapon that Brighton have is the far post cross deep from the half space. Van Hecke can move forward from right centre-back, and to be fair, he has got a wicked delivery on him in these positions, but having Pascal Gross pull away from pressure to be able to wrap his right foot around it is a dangerous weapon. The aim, as I said, is for the far post, because with the numbers that Brighton have centrally ready to attack the box the moment a ball is ready to be played in, will naturally drag the defence over, allowing the winger on the far side, Mitoma on this occasion, to get on the end of the cross in space to shoot, or knock it back into the 6-yard box for someone to tap in. I think that covers all the in-possession stuff I think I can go over in a short space of time, but there is definitely some stuff I missed. There's so much to this Brighton team, a proper tactician's fantasy. Defensively, Brighton are equally as impressive. They alternate between a man-to-man press and zonal mid-block excellently. It's very Mikel Arteta-like actually. It's very adaptive and opposition-specific, where Brighton will generally look to press man-to-man from goal kicks. If the opposition look to play around the outside, then the winger will press the centre-back if Brighton striker is on the far side centre-back, meaning the full-back for Brighton needs to be ready to press into the opposition's half and attach himself to the spare full-back, going touch-tight to force the opposition long. Whoever Brighton's centre-backs are need to be ready to engage physically and aerially. Brighton's press will look to angle the opposition's play out to the side where Brighton have a more aerially dominant centre-back to increase Brighton's chances of winning the ball back. Sometimes the opposition's play means that Brighton have to drop into a more zonal shape. The shape they usually use is a 4-4-2, and the distances are always pretty spot on. Far cry from Michael Carrick's defensive shape, which I spoke about the other week. The front two will look to block central possession to the pivot, and the wide players will look to keep a good distance between themselves and their fullbacks, close enough to their midfield to restrict space for an opposition to play through, but still able to jump to the opposition's fullback if that's the method they use. The fullbacks for Brighton will look to be a little more aggressive in their pressing. If a winger looks to drop in and get on the ball in central positions, then they have to make sure they track those movements touch tight. Sometimes this means a team will look to drop as many players deep outside the Brighton mid-block to get on the ball and encourage progression, like Arsenal need an invite anyway to do this. Again, the midfielders won't follow them, they're more about restricting space in the centre. So Eze looking to get on the ball this deep isn't a concern, because there's very little chance for him to play through, and if they do look to go long, the Brighton back four will look to quickly drop off and head the ball away. They stick to their shape very well and drop and engage as a unit excellently. Brighton will also look to drop an extra player into the defensive line, and it will generally be one of the wingers if the opposition have an aggressively positioned fullback. So Brighton need to be able to match that. Even if the opposition fullback moves inside, the winger can stay outside with the Brighton fullback tucking in narrow to still keep a man close. With the extra protection of having 5 at the back, the 2 players in between centre-back and full-back positions need to be ready to engage and press a player that drops deep in the vertical zone ahead, outside of the midfield and forward units, if that space becomes available. Generally, this will push the opposition towards the far side to have to play through. The 5 midfielders and attackers will look to lock the opposition onto that side by going man-to-man in that area, closing down the player on the ball and his nearest passing options, with the still pretty reliable protection of the back 5 in behind them. That Hürzeler has an answer for everything, doesn't he? But let me know what you guys think of him and Brighton. Anything you want to add or that I missed, let me know down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more. In a bit, lads.